Hi, this is Vince with Discount Inboard Marine. Today we're going to change an impeller on a Sherwood pump. This particular impeller is on a right-hand rotation 351 Ford, and we'll show you what to watch out for when we start the process. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is remove the hoses, the water hoses. Your inlet is going to be on the bottom, your outlet is going to be on the top, and that goes to the thermostat housing. This particular pump came from the chrome kit that used to be available from PCM. It isn't anymore, so it looks a little different. Most of the time they're painted. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to loosen the mounting bolts, and then we're going to loosen the pump. We're going to take the belt off, the hose off, and we're going to inspect the belt, make sure that it's in good condition, and then we're going to remove the pump and take it to the workbench. Okay, we're going to take our hose off. This uses a 5/16 inch socket, so we're going to loosen that up. And we're going to take that top hose off. We're going to take the bottom hose off, which it's already off on this engine, so we don't have to worry about that. I just jiggle those back and forth a little bit, twist them and pull, and then that's out of the way. Then we're going to take a 1/2 inch socket and take our mounting bolts out. I already took the bottom one out. That'll loosen up the pump, and then we can take our belt off. The belt comes off. I also like to take the belts, twist them, make sure they're not cracking, make sure they're not worn or frayed, any problems like that. This belt looks pretty good, so we'll reuse it. And then we take this bolt out. These holes are threaded going into the pump, so you don't have to worry about bolts on the or nuts on the other end. There's also a cam screw right here, and this cam screw is facing out. That's for a right-hand rotation engine found in most older Nautiques. If it's a left-hand rotation like the GT40, that cam screw is going to be facing in towards the engine. So you want to keep track of your engine rotation and which way the pump goes back on the engine. So we'll take this off, take it over to our workbench, and we'll take it apart. Okay, I'm going to take a Sharpie and just mark where the two halves of the pump come together, where the cam screw is, and where the tag is. That will tell us what model the Sherwood pump is. The newer ones don't have this tag, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it. But that'll help keep everything straight. And then we're going to take these 3 bolts out. There's one here, here, and down here, and then that will separate the pump, and we'll go ahead and do that. And the impeller is in the back housing right here where my thumb is. This is a 1/2 inch, or I'm sorry, 7/16 inch socket. I like to take these to the workbench, so when I reassemble it, I know that the O-ring is seated properly, that everything is where it should be, that the gasket is seated where it should be, and the impeller is in place. And there's a little keyway that can be a little bugger to get it in correctly, but once all that is in, then the pump's ready to go. We've got our bolts out. We separate the housing. This is the intermediate plate, and that's where the gasket goes. And you can see this gasket's pretty well done, so we will replace it. Here's the keyway. That did not come out, and that's fine. That can stay there. Makes it easier to put everything back in. We're going to pry that impeller out. I just use a paint can opener, and it should come right out. And get that one in. When you go and put the impeller back in, you don't have to worry about which way these blades go. As soon as you bump the engine, the blades will go in the right direction. You can see this impeller has been in that housing for a while, and they will retain a memory. So these are bent over. As time goes on, these become less efficient because the blades never get a chance to straighten back out. So this impeller has been in that housing for a while. It's pretty well worn on the edges. So it's time for a new one. It's been in there about a year. So we'll go ahead, get a new impeller, gasket, and we'll reassemble. Okay, this is our gasket that came off. It came off pretty easy. You want to make sure that where it goes back on is clean. You also want to check the bearings, and I just take and spin the pulley. It's nice and tight. There's no slop. It's nice and smooth. The action is nice and smooth. That tells me the bearings are in good condition. So we can go ahead. The impeller kits come with a number of different gaskets, so you want to make sure you get the right one. We've got our new gasket. We're going to put that on. Then our new impeller will go on. Just line up the keyway, drops right in. The holes line up. Now we're ready to put our housing back on. This gets a little bit, well, we got to do the O-ring. So here's the O-ring. You got to pull the old one out, put the new one in. There is a new O-ring included in the kit, and that goes into place. One thing you can do, you can use a little bit of Vaseline on the O-ring. That'll help keep it in place, and we'll go ahead and do that. We've got our gasket in place. We're going to take the plate, and that'll go on next, then our impeller. And I am going to take just a razor blade and clean this plate off and get all the material off it, make sure that it's clean when we put it back on. Okay, so we've got our gasket on first, then our plate goes on. We got it cleaned off, so the surfaces that are going to mate with the gasket and the O-ring are cleaned off. Then we put on our impeller. There's also 3 holes. You want to make sure the gasket holes line up and the plate holes line up. Your impeller goes on. And then to get the back of the pump on, you can see that little cam screw we talked about that faces away from the engine holds this little cam in place. And so you do have to twist the housing a little bit to bend the blades to get the housing on. Okay, I bent that housing a little bit, and you can hold it and twist it and bring the bolt holes down so that they line up, and then just double check and make sure that your housing is in the same place, and then you can put the 3 bolts back in and we're ready to put it back on. We pushed the housing down to the bearing housing, pushed it down hard, all the holes line up, everything is good. Now in case your marks got erased or you can't tell where you are, once everything is down, you can see that here are the hoses, here are the mounting bolts. They're in line with each other. If they aren't, simply put the pulley down, lift up on the housing a little bit, and then rotate the bearing housing. And you can rotate it back and forth without disturbing the gasket, and then get the holes lined up. Now we're ready to put our 3 mounting holes back in because everything is aligned, and your marks should match up if they're still there. If they aren't there, you can get everything to line up. Mounting holes are here, hoses are here, everything is in a straight line. Yes, I can.
You can screw a bolt in! You did it!
Remarkable. Remarkable. We've got our top bolt securing the pump to the bracket, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the belt on, which I already did. It'll go on real nice and easy, and then I'll come back and put the bottom bolt in, and then we'll go ahead and tighten it up. We snugged up the bottom bolt to the bracket, and then put the top bolt in, and then I just pulled the hose barb tight as I could, tightened up the top bolt, and you don't want any more than a 1/2 inch deflection in the center of the belt. That's about a 1/2 inch. That's good and tight. should not be a problem. And then come back and just make sure that your bolts are tight. And then you're ready to put your hoses back on. And then we'll put water to it. We'll look for leaks. And one other thing I like to do, if possible, start the engine, put your hand on the back of the pump where the impeller is, and if everything is done correctly and everything's working correctly, that will become lake water temperature, which is cool. If it starts getting hot, shut the engine off, something isn't right. So we'll check it out, check for leaks, and if everything works good, we've got a new impeller in the engine for another year. Thank you for watching the video. If you do have any questions or we can help with anything, give us a call at 803-345-0996. I'm extension 3, and thank you very much for your time.